Hundreds of troops are at the southern border right now as officials brace for an expected surge of migrants following the expiration of Title 42. Right now, about 550 active duty troops arrived this week to help assist federal agents with what is likely to be a very chaotic border situation for a while, even the White House categorizing it as that. They are joining 2,500 National Guard troops on the border. Here to talk more about the situation and also what we're seeing in Ukraine, Paul Rykov, national security and political analyst and the president of Righteous Media. Paul, good to see you. As Thursdays come along, I always look forward to our discussions. I want to start at the border with the troops. It's a pretty complicated orchestrated measure, right? You've got state National Guard, you've got the federal National Guard, you've got Border Patrol, local police and sheriffs. Talk about the coordination of this law enforcement effort right now on the eve of what could be a major influx of migrants.
Well, Marnie, it's a tricky mission. It's an important mission. It's a national security mission. It's a law enforcement mission. It's a humanitarian mission. And I think the influx of new troops just emphasized that this is an important priority for the Defense Department, for the president, and I think for the whole country. We've had National Guard troops on the border for years now. We've had 2,500 or so there that have been backing up Border Patrol. And this is an influx of reinforcements. But they're not going to be law enforcement. These are not combat troops. These are administrative troops. They're logistical troops. They're going to be doing things like data entry and warehouse support. They're likely not going to be directly interacting with migrants unless they're already in custody. So I think it's a full effort to try to back up the Border Patrol. I would expect the Department of Defense to have to send additional support in the months to come, especially if the political pressure goes up. But I think it also underscores how much our National Guard troops do. I mean, they're asked to go to the border. They're asked to train allies in places like Poland. They're still doing national security missions here at home. They're training all around the world. And our national security still fights wildfires and flooding. So I think it should remind everybody how much the men and women of our National Guard are doing, especially a couple weeks before Memorial Day, when we're going to reflect on them especially.
Right. They go to the front line, wherever that front line is, and answer the call. Paul, this situation at Zaporizhzhia, the nuclear plant, is concerning for a number of reasons, given what work is happening there. When you hear that Russia wants to remove the Ukrainian workers who are overseeing the work at this plant, what does that tell you and what concerns you most?
Bad, bad, bad. I mean, this has always been a really critical part of this landscape that I think most Americans aren't tracking on. Zaporizhzhia, I think, is the biggest nuke plant in that part of Europe. Any instability around a nuke plant is a potential environmental disaster and security disaster for the entire world. So I think it's another threat by Russia to try to destabilize the region and I think to try to manipulate the West and NATO. But I think it's something we have to understand. I would be in support of whatever NATO can do to secure that as a safe area. I hope that the Russians and Ukrainians can agree that a nuke plant is off limits in their fighting. But we know that in this war, and especially on Putin's side, nothing is off limits. He's willing to cross any line. He's willing to violate any war crime standards. And I think we could understand that this is going to be something you're going to hear more about Putin trying to leverage for the manipulation and for PR and propaganda in the weeks to come.
Right. That is worrisome, but I do want to highlight some positive news. Ukrainian military has successfully shot down a number of Iranian-made drones that Russia is sending into the region using the Patriot missile defense system that the U.S. was able to supply and train them on. How significant is this? Are we at a turning point?
We are. I mean, you and I have been talking about the Patriot missiles and what they could do for, I think, months now. Well, they're in play now. They're being used. American Patriot missile systems are shooting down air threats. And I think that's a huge advantage to the Ukrainians at a critical time. It's the best type of weapon system in the world. And now there's breaking news that Storm Shadow missile systems are also going to be heading over. These are cruise missiles created by the UK in collaboration with the French. That's going to give Ukrainian additional reach and firepower. They're air-launched, and they can go in stealth mode about 150 miles plus into occupied territories. They're not quite what the U.S. has. That we have ATACMS, which are a little bit higher range and a little bit more modern. The Ukrainians want those as well. But I think all this is culminating in this big spring offensive that we've been watching and waiting for. It may be a summer offensive, but likely the biggest land conflict we're going to see in Europe since World War II is coming, and you're seeing additional pieces put in place by the day.
Right. Just what they've been asking for, they're getting now. I want to get your thoughts on another topic before we run out of time. Republican Senator Tommy Tuberville has blocked more than 180 non-political military promotions to protest the Pentagon's abortion policy. How will this hold up nominations by Tuberville's impact on the military?
I think it throws a huge monkey wrench in the Department of Defense. This is really, in my view, a radical reckless and irresponsible thing to do. Mitch McConnell's not standing with him on this. This is Tuberville really alone on an island. And it's blocking the promotions of almost 200 senior military officers. They can't go to new duty stations. Their families can't move. And it's all really kind of a political temper tantrum based off his opinion on abortion. You know, I don't care how you feel about abortion. Take that, leave it out of the Pentagon, leave it away from our Defense Department, especially when we're talking about Ukraine, we're talking about the border. We should be able to take his personal political views about abortion and separate that from the promotion of our admirals and our generals who need to get in the field. They need to be stationed in leadership positions, and their families need certainty about what's to come. So I think it's kind of the worst of politics. I don't think it's a partisan thing. I think it's a personal thing. And Tommy Tuberville is a former football coach. He knows a lot about football fields, but I don't think he knows about battlefields. And right now he's in conflict with the Secretary of Defense and most of the military on this.
All right, we'll leave it there. Paul, good to see you. See you next week.